Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. So welcome to this session, and thanks for choosing me over Iron Biz, which I was like 100% sure I was going to go to myself until I figured out I would be presenting at the same time. So let me start by saying that I am more nervous than I usually am when I have to do a talk. Part of it is this is my very first Tableau conference, and I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what kind of people attend a Tableau conference. I didn't know who would be attending my session, what their backgrounds would be. I didn't know that you could do a presentation dressed as a Sith person. I didn't know, that it would be okay to say frickin', and I'm really excited about that because I do want to say frickin'. I also am nervous because now that I've been to several of the presentations in the conference so far, and I've been impressed by all the clever and fancy tricks and so forth that I've seen, I'm really feeling kind of dopey because I'm not going to show any really fancy tricks. Most of what I'm doing is very straightforward. And furthermore, I would say that before yesterday, I have never received any kind of Tableau training. I don't own a book about Tableau or anything like that. I'm entirely self-taught. But now I want to make the argument that this is a strength and this is a wonderful thing. I am self-taught. I'm not using fancy tricks, and yet I think we've pulled off an amazing, wonderful thing just doing straightforward stuff that's easy to access for all people in Tableau. So yay. So as part of this, getting ready to do the presentation, I had to do a trial presentation to a Tableau employee, and he said, it was good, I was on the right track, but that the whole presentation would go much better if you all had a sense of who I am. I needed to say a little bit about myself, a little bit about my story. So then I thought, okay, I have to do the little bio. So the elements that leapt to mind as relevant of my bio is I have a PhD in sociology from the University of Chicago, and I actually first came to Cornell University in the academic track. And in fact, I was a professor at Cornell. But turned out I was very unhappy with that role, and partly, I think a large part of that is I hated standing in front of big rooms of people doing PowerPoint. So that's sort of the standard bio, but it's maybe not the most relevant as to how I got here to being a Tableau zealot. And when I think about what made me a data visualization person, I think back to how when I started college, my first major was in art. And I changed out of that fairly soon. I don't really have an artist temperament, but suffice it to say I'm a visually oriented person. I have a great appreciation for design. I instead pursued a degree where I got to study a lot of statistics, so I have a deep and more highly cultivated orientation towards statistics and math. I've worked a lot with empirical data about people, but when you couple that with the fact that Tableau is just a beautiful thing, you've got the makings of a Tableau enthusiast. So I am the director of an institutional research office, and I know very few of the faces in this room. So I want to say, how many folks are from an institutional research office? And it's more than I would have expected. How many people are not from institutional research? How many people are not from higher education? Okay, wonderful. This is great. So in the event that you don't know what an institutional research office is, and I've spent the last several days trying to explain to everybody what I mean, what that is, we say IR. It's an IR office. And perhaps the most succinct way to describe it to this audience is to say that IR is to higher education what business intelligence is to the for-profit or corporate world. So it's information about the university, and especially old-style business intelligence before business intelligence came to mean sort of dashboarding. So officially and formally speaking, the mission of my office is to provide official, accurate, and unbiased information and analysis about the university in support of institutional planning, decision-making, and reporting obligations. So one distinction that may apply in thinking about our field of institutional research as compared to business intelligence in the for-profit world, or even IR at institutions more that are less like Cornell, is that we're very focused at looking at the long term, the big picture. Almost nothing we do at Cornell is tied, or in our office, is tied to real-time data. Students enroll on the first day of the semester. We could count them then. That number is going to be constant throughout the semester and for the large part throughout the year. So we don't really bother with real-time data. We're working with frozen files. So Cornell University is about to celebrate 150 years next year. We are the youngest institution in the Ivy League at 150 years. And I think one could argue that much of the strength of American elite higher education is the unchanging nature of it. So if we're not paying attention to the real-time fluctuations, it's because we're very proud of staying static. We've been engaged in essentially the same activity over the entire 150 years of our history. We have an incredibly stable workforce. The median age of a faculty is 55, 56. They've been there for more than 15 years. Our students are very stable and so forth. So while in a BI, in a commercial environment, or in a different kind of IR office, you might be engaged in up to the minute information and data, our focus is on the 10-year period, the 20-year period, or even longer. And so it's not that change doesn't happen. Change is real at Cornell and in our kind of institution, but it is incremental. So even when people think they're doing the same thing over time, the changes accrete slowly. And it's only when you sort of zoom out and look at the big picture that, that you see those changes. All right, today I wanted to talk about the University Factbook. And I better keep track of my notes here. The university, and I kind of laugh at myself or think how sad is my life, I guess, that I think that the University Factbook is this really important thing and so fascinating, and you just can't wait to see this grid of numbers and so forth. But further on that note, I've just read a scintillating monograph on the history of the University Factbook, which I'm sure you'll be running out to purchase from New Directions in Institutional Research. But suffice it to say, I need to skip, that the Factbook is a foundational document in institutional research. And so what Mr. Jones here is saying in this monograph, although there is clearly more to institutional research than just producing a Factbook, there may be no other tangible evidence that so clearly and so simply demonstrates and defines the essence of the institutional research profession. So while this fascinating monograph suggests that the first known university Factbook appeared in 1961, it was a brand new idea in 1961, and people sort of latched onto it and thought it was a helpful thing, radical change. And it actually took a number of years for it to take hold across universities. So it was one university in 1961 and so forth. Our own Factbook dates back to the mid-1980s. And if we were slow adopters, giving the impression that we were slow adopters, we were not. There are still universities that do not have Factbooks. Factbooks take different shapes, by the way. They are sometimes a fact sheet and so forth, and I'll go over that in a little bit. So what is it? In our case, it's been a document that's been produced once a year. It is a compendium of facts, information about the university. So for example, when you Google Cornell University, I think it's great that Google automatically fills in a little bit of information. I'm not quite sure how that happens, but there's a few facts about the university. Google says our accept rate is 14%, that we have 21,424 students. Those are the kinds of commonly traded numbers that a Factbook provides, either to university leadership or to the world more generally. Only there are many, many more facts in a Factbook, or in our Factbook anyway. Are there universities here that do not have Factbooks? All right, so we know what we're doing. I brought a prop all the way from New York. This is Cornell's Factbook in its earliest carnation. This is what it looked like. It is a 3-ring binder. It has tabs with sections in it. It was updated annually. It is, clearly paper. There are white paper tabs. There's blue divider pages that subdivide the white sections and so forth. It was a pretty monumental data gathering effort, and it lived on in this form of the 3-ring binder for at least 10 years, from the 1980s to 1996. This is the 1996 edition. In this edition, there's 189 pages of just tables. There's not a single picture in here. It's just grids of numbers. In 1996, we had a monumental transformation. My predecessor made the decision that we were going to change the Factbook. So here's the letter that's in my prop, which I want to hold up a lot because it's really heavy, and I brought it from New York, okay? Enclosed, please find a complete update to the insides of the Cornell University Factbook. Please recycle the current insides of your Factbook, except for the divider pages, because we're not going to provide those for you, and insert the enclosed updated pages. We anticipate that this will be the final time that we publish the Factbook on paper. This summer, we will begin the process of migrating the Factbook to a worldwide website. This will allow us to make the update Factbook information in a more timely fashion, and then this part is important to me, as well as to permit us to make this information available to a wider audience. So my predecessor made the decision that we were not going to distribute the paper anymore, and we were going to put Factbook information on a public website. The old Factbook, I was trying to find the distribution list for it. I think I found an ancient MacWrite file or something that might have had the distribution list in it. It looks like it went out to maybe 200 people. So we have a large board of trustees, 65 people on the board of trustees, additional emeritus trustees, lots of trustees. So it would have gone to vice presidents, deans, communication officers, and so forth. So 200 is a reasonable number, but now we're opening it up to the whole world. So this important transformation in 1996 took us from the 3-ring binder to the virtual 3-ring binder. So no longer did you have to remove all those pages. But in fact, the new setup worked exactly like the 3-ring binder. So this still exists on our webpage, by the way. This is the Factbook archives. It was a list, a hierarchical list of PDFs. And so it was arranged with the same headings as the white tabs in the 3-ring binders: admissions, enrollment, tuition, so forth. And in order to get some information out of here, you would have to navigate this hierarchical structure of links. So let's say I wanted to know something about university enrollment. I would take a look at what's available under enrollment and say, okay, I want undergraduate, and I would click on that. It would bring up this list of options about what is available under undergraduate. I might have a sense of what I would want, and I click on total university. And in this particular case, it brings up a PDF with a list of numbers. And in this particular case, it gave me also class year, which I didn't know that I was going to be getting. And then next time when I go back to this Factbook and I'm saying, I think I know that there's something that has a class year in it, but I don't know where to find it, and so forth. So it was a pain to navigate. And I say this as the director of the office, someone who fields a lot of phone calls, and I would say, oh, that's in the Factbook. And I would have to navigate to find where the answer was B. I'm probably the biggest user of the Factbook. It was a pain to navigate. So the old Factbook, 189 pages. At the same time, there was a broad-based perception that we didn't have data. Leadership would always be talking about, we don't have data. It was hard to navigate, hit or miss searching. I could never remember where specific numbers were located. More importantly, I think it was hard to look across sections of the binder. So the information that is supplied on a particular PDF only exists in the context of the other numbers that happen to be on that page. But it was very difficult to then compare what's on this page to another page in the binder or in the virtual binder. And then furthermore, the fact that we tried to provide a breakdown of enrollment by race and a breakdown by gender and maybe race by gender, but we didn't do race by gender by each college, but we might have a college by race and so forth, but we didn't have all possible combinations. So even with 189 pages, we weren't answering all the questions that would come up. So in 2002, we moved to Tableau, and I wanted to start with our first visualization. I'm sorry, 2012, we moved to Tableau, and I wanted to start with this as an example. This is an Excel spreadsheet that's been maintained in our office for many years, not since 1886, but at some points, somebody created this Excel document that's an awesome thing that has enrollment from 1886 to the present. And in fact, we're only looking at a subset of it here because it's so much data, it's very hard to display. And across the top in the tiny little headers, undergraduate, graduate, and professional. Cornell has 10 or 11 colleges, depending on how you count, 7 undergraduate colleges. So the counts are by gender for within each of the colleges under those categories, so forth. So if I were to ask you what the heck is going on with these numbers, how has enrollment changed, it would be a pain to distill that. So this was one of the first projects we did. We took this table and put it into Tableau, and we ended up with this. And we love this, and we could spend so much time on it. And this is just a screen capture, but now I did do a little trick, which is I inserted the Tableau web page into our PowerPoint, so we can actually interact with it. So this, again, very straightforward. We're just looking at enrollment. The gray is total enrollment over time. The blue is the line for men, red line for women. And we can see a number of conclusions that we couldn't have made very easily by looking at the table. So, of course, enrollment's grown over time. Right away, you pick out the impact of world wars. So World War I is in here. World War II is in here. What's interesting about World War II, of course, men's enrollment plummeted dramatically, but women's enrollment actually increased. You can also pick up very easily the convergence of by sex, so that men and women are enrolling in fairly equal numbers and so forth. And in fact, this is total enrollment. At the undergraduate level, we now have more female students than male. And as we played with this more and more, there's so many wonderful things you can find. So graduate students, these are your research degrees, MA, MS, and PhD. You can see that enrollment, how that's changed over time, still more men than women. The law school has seen a very recent rise in female enrollment, meaning from the 1970s, such that now women are about half of the class. That looks very different than the business school, where there's still a very large disparity. And then look at the vet school. And we knew this, but we didn't know it. And the vet school one, by the way, so what is the story of this? I believe, without further research involved, I believe this is the transition from large animal medicine to small animal, so agricultural, people who treat cows and so forth, that segment of vet med is much more male-dominated, and then this is the rise of small animal medicine, or, taking care of pets. I just wanted to scroll down the bottom so we could look at 158,000 views, which is more than we ever got on a PDF. We did get to be Viz of the Day for Tableau. So I want to go out of PowerPoint now to go to our Factbook as it exists now. So this is a public website, so if at any time you want to go there yourself, you're welcome to do so. This is the University Factbook. Remember, we're starting at a point of 189 pages of PDFs. And where we've arrived now is that I'm going to say over and over again that we have 6 workbooks. We actually have a 7th workbook. But from 189 down to 7 is a pretty impressive accomplishment. The 7th one is just one small graph of the shocking rise in tuition, but it only is 1 page in that particular workbook. So let me just click on the one about enrollment. All right. Again, I get really excited about things that may be very boring to some people. But this is a page called Student Enrollment at a Glance, and it was a page that was produced for the Factbook every year. And when I first started working in institutional research, I would take this printed out PDF version and stick it to my wall because I knew it answered most of the questions people had or even that I needed to use. So it's got total enrollment, undergraduate, graduate, and professional, and so forth. It's got it broken down by sex, by race, ethnicity. These are all the usual suspects, as we call it. First-time freshmen, continuing students, home region, where our students originated from, so New York, the Middle States region, international, and so forth. Whether they're studying abroad or on campus, in absentia, and a little bit about their financial aid status. So this is an incredibly important document. When we produced this before, the old model, if you'll remember, is you produce this and then the new pages come out and you throw the old pages away, right? But now this is a small thing to much of the world, but it's a big thing to me. Now you can go and find all the old ones if you needed to find an information from the past. Let me just point out that this says fall 2013, our fall 2014 information. We won't take that snapshot until the beginning of October. So we're about as old out as these data are going to get before we update for fall 2014. We're just not there yet. All right, so this is 1 page, but it is also this 12 pages because I've got 12 pages worth of information there. It was very simple, and this was something we came up as an afterthought. It would be helpful to have the same information by college. So we've got 10 different colleges at the university, and maybe you just want to know this for students in arts and sciences, so you can get that detail there. So now this 1 page has become 12 pages over time, times 10 different colleges. We've already got, replaced essentially 120 pages worth of information. And then finally, you could know this about all students, or you could narrow it down just to information about first-time freshmen if that's what you were interested in. So this 1 tab on this 1 workbook is already supplying way more information than we made available to folks. It's not new in any sense. These are the old things that we used to produce anyway. But it's all available all the time and easy to access without being an overwhelming and hard to navigate system. So those are boring in the sense that they're numbers and pictures are better. So it's very easy, of course, to provide some basic information. And again, when we think that we're doing the same thing over time, and then when you start zooming out and looking at a longer picture, you find that the university's changed. And one of the ways that we've changed, somewhat intentionally, is increasing our enrollment of professional degree students. So this, for example, I'm looking at engineering, and very quickly can just look at the change in the distribution of enrollment on that. In institutional research, we get a large number of questions about where people come from. So there's a couple of ways we could do it, but of course, what's really fun is just very easily and quickly to throw that into a map. So these are international students. What are the origins of international students? Huge percentage of our international students are Canadian, which you almost don't want to count as international, but there you have it. Technically, they are not US citizens. And then down below, we get these weird questions like maybe the development office is talking to an alum from a specific country, and they want to know how many students have we had over the last decade from Cameroon, because now we have a rich person from Cameroon or whatever. Are you really going to supply that in the fact book? Well, yes, you can, because of the little magic plus sign here, and you click on that. And so all of these continents break out into individual countries. So it's just a matter of, a second before we can answer that level of question. And then similarly for New York State, Cornell is the land-grant institution for New York. There's a lot of curiosity or need for information about how we're serving different counties and so forth. So we can look at the geographic origins of our students by county for the ones from New York. So this is an immense amount of information, much more than we were providing. And I keep saying it's more, but it's also fundamentally the same as what we were providing. We would provide this, none of this, we're not going out on a limb and providing different things that we weren't providing already, but we're providing it over time for different years, and we're providing a small amount of drill down information that we would have made available to folks on request anyway. However, if we have not yet answered your questions about Cornell enrollment, how many ways can we do this? We came up with this particular display just using a simple parameter. This is as fancy as I get. Using a parameter, this allows our consumer of information to design their own tables if they want to look at head counts by college and sex. They can choose what they want to create the table by. And again, then there's additional filters here to provide that context. So this is very much sort of a very helpful self-service tool. Now, we did, as I said, reduce the fact book from 189 pages down to 6 or 7 different workbooks. But there is in here this idea that there are separate workbooks. And I'm still working under the model of the tabs in the 3-ring binder. You know, that if you want admissions information, you go into the admissions workbook. And if you want enrollment information, you go into the student enrollment workbook and so forth. What that really reflects, I think, is the way the data is collected and stored. It does not reflect the way that we should be thinking, the way people need to be thinking about the university, the way that we walk through the university and we look at people around us and so forth. This is the data analyst view of the world and not the best way to understand the university. I'm getting new email as I talk. It's distracting. So I think we are in making baby steps in terms of thinking about how can we provide a more synthetic view of the university, about how the pieces fit together and so forth. And I think we're still in the very early stages of that. But right here, quick facts about the university is a first minor attempt. So this is fundamentally using exactly the same information, the same data sources, same data sets as the Factbook pages, which are all organized around the data silos. But everything is pulled together onto one simple page. So this is the kind of page that, let's say the risk management office needs to know headcount information so that they can negotiate the price of insurance with somebody or something like that, or software licensing or whatever, or the president comes here because he wants to be able to say a few words about the university. We have 10,000 employees and 20,000 students and so forth. All of that should be in a single quick go-to place, and that's our quick facts page. So that was a first, and I will admit it's a pretty minor accomplishment, but this is a useful thing, and I know this because I have had questions from the president and the provost who've gone there to use it, so I'm very happy about that. A more significant accomplishment, I think, is represented by our diversity dashboards. So we had this, again, this pervasive notion that, you know, we don't have the information that we need. We don't understand the information, or, you know, we haven't put our arms around the data. And in no area is that more true than in diversity stuff. People are always asking for diversity stuff, and by diversity I mean race and gender of our populations. Always this sense that there wasn't information, and we're pulling our hair out going, everything we do by race and gender. Every time we count anybody, we count it by race and gender. We do our survey analyses all by race and gender. We look at GPA, everything. How can you say there's no information about it? Well, I think sort of it goes back to the 3-ring binder, and it goes back to the data silo issue. We had this information over here, we had it over there, and if you cared about diversity, you had to go to several different places to find that information. So this project, Diversity Dashboards, we started out with one called the Diversity Dashboard, which just looked at composition, and then, and by that I mean head counts, who's on campus, and how diverse are they. That effort has expanded to become the Diversity Dashboards, but sticking closer to the theme of the Factbook, let me stick with the composition dashboard. So what we have here is one of the first times, I think, that we sort of put together demographic information about various different constituencies around campus and how they look in the context of one another. The graph on the top is just a pie chart of gender composition, and then below that, these bar charts are the racial composition in broad categories. So for example, undergraduate students, we already talked about how they're sort of 50-50 male and female. That contrasts quite a bit with what we see on the faculty, where we're at 30% female. Staff, on the other hand, non-academic staff like myself, we are female-dominated, 58%. So even just putting these numbers side by side with one another, suddenly we had new insights about the way the university is composed. And again, this reflects how we experience the university when we walk through it. We see people, and we interact with all these people in the course of our days, and we don't think of them as being in certain, necessarily, we don't think of them in being in certain buckets or data silos. And then just a few comments about the race composition down here. Undergraduates, 42% white U.S. citizens. Where's our international is here, 9%. Look how different it is in the grad and professional student population, 38% international. And then look at how both of those contrast so much with the demographic composition of the faculty. And whitest of all are the non-academic staff. So this provides, a more contextual picture about what the issues are for the university in terms of diversity information. I know that I skipped some parts that I wanted to talk about, which is how did we get here? My notes pages are now officially all out of order. So how did we get here? What made us be able to do these Tableau workbooks, and what kind of conversations did we have to have on campus so that we could do the online Factbook and so forth? And the answer to that is we had to have very few conversations, partly because my first element is my predecessor had decided to put the Factbook onto the World Wide Web. So there was already a decision made that we were going to supply this information publicly. I don't think many people were using it. It was sort of hidden out in the public. Was not used to the extent that it is now. But that decision was made. So I didn't have to go and ask for permission. I think the second factor that made us able to do this relatively quickly and without a lot of pains were the fact that we were using Tableau, because I mentioned that I have a degree in sociology, not astrophysics, not computer science, not a lot of the more technical fields. I didn't have experience designing web pages or whatever. So I got this tool, Tableau, and I could do it. And it made, if I had to trot over to our IT organization and say, I want some dashboards, I want the Factbook on the web, it would have taken multiple years. And literally, I know this, that it would take probably $2 million or something like that. So Tableau enabled us to move this from concept to reality very quickly. And then the third thing that made this happen is, again, about avoiding the very difficult conversations. We published this using Tableau Public Premium, which used to be called Tableau Digital. So just a refresher. Tableau public, you can publish stuff and people can go and look at it, and there's no way to secure it. And then if they want to download the underlying data, they can download the underlying data. Tableau Public Premium, the distinction is that we pay them money so that people cannot download the data. So we are using Tableau Public Premium to do this. The benefit, from my point of view, is that we were able to absorb the cost of that within the departmental budget without having to go to, let's say, the president's cabinet and say, I need $2 million and a bunch of IT support and so forth in order to make this happen. I could make the arrangements for that contract within the context of our small office. All the decision making was in the small body of folks who are producing the information and so forth. So we were able to go from concept to reality very quickly. Any questions about Tableau Public Premium? Yes?
Is there a limit to the number of people who can view it?
So the question is there a limit to the number of people who can view it? So there is some sort of page view limit, which, you know, we have a lot because we were viz of the day on our pretty enrollment over time since 1868. So we're like at 150,000. I can't remember the contract limits, but it's way more than that. So unless you're like tremendously movie star, data rock star, I got that shirt, you know, I don't think you're going to run into the limit there. Other questions about that decision? Yes?
So you're using Tableau Desktop to create these and then you publish them to, how many copies of Desktop do you have?
There's probably, yeah, right. For most of the stuff that has gone on the web, I'd say 2 of us are pretty heavy users, and at least 5 of us are doing something with Tableau and publishing ourselves to the web and so forth. I should make clear that we also have Tableau server, but we have a small server, and everything that I'm showing you today is all the stuff that we push out publicly, but we also have a server for our deans and so forth, a fairly small population of users where we can publish more secure information.
One more question about Tableau Public Premium. You can't download data at all?
Well, I can control it. So yes, I can say that you can or you can't.
Oh, you can give permission to
yeah.
individual?
No, to the world.
Oh, to the world.
To the world, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
On a per workbook basis, or?
Yes, on a per workbook basis.
All the dashboards in the Factbook are based on Excel files, or do you?
This is a great question. So, oh, I'm sorry. So what do the data look like that have gone into this? So let me just back up again and say what our history was. So we take a snapshot, right? And we take a snapshot. It used to be we, the IR office, would go to the data mart on the Friday of the 6th week of the semester, and we would take the data out, and then we would save it. Eventually, along the line, we convinced our IT organization that that's a useful snapshot. So they snapshot the data and it exists in the data mart. We still take it out of there. There is a small amount of tidying up of the data that happens in our shop. All of that is done in Excel. So historically, what has happened is that there are, there's the Excel file that is this snapshot. And, a data analyst who's been working in the office for years sort of massages things and like, oh, I hate that name in the data mart, and changes some column headings, right, or adds some new calculated fields and so forth. So our first big effort in creating this thing, we probably spent 2 months cleaning old data files, making every one of them look the same, because every semester was a new game. You repeat that whole process. You create those new calculated fields, but this time you did it slightly different. There were different numbers of columns in each one of those snapshots and so forth. So we spent a long time bringing it all together into one giant tab delimited file. So that's our fancy data structure, but it works. And we're going to take the snapshot in October, and we're going to append that information to the bottom of that file. All right, We went from 189 pages to 6 or 7 workbooks. All the visualizations that are relating to student access the same underlying data, same visualizations relating to faculty and so forth. So the diversity dashboards are replicating information that's already in the Factbook, which I think is a really powerful thing. If you think about how the Factbook was produced and updated in the past with 189 pages, I think we had 4 different analysts working on, updating this particular PDF, print, make a PDF, hand it over to the IT person, and they would upload that PDF and make sure the link is not broken and all this stuff. Now we essentially have 6 different data files that need updating, and then we just refresh the visualization, and boom, we're in business with, again, more, in fact, pages than we used to have, but a much quicker update process. And then, the tooltips things and so forth allows us to do storytelling graphs without sacrificing the precision of having the exact numbers. So much less time spent updating information. I was asked by the person who reviewed my presentation from Tableau, well, how do you know what the reaction is? Have people liked it and so forth? And I said that we judge by success when people stop contacting you. So if my phone is not ringing, that's great. If they're going to the website and they're not asking questions about what they're finding there and so forth. So as far as I know, it's going well. And we've been, this will be our 3rd cycle of the Factbook in this format. We had a couple of emails, in the first year from people saying that they had bookmarked the old PDF and why can't I have it the way that I've always had it before and so forth. And at the same time, I had a few sort of astonished comments like, this is amazing, and so forth. So then I also want to say that even though we've gone the extra mile to try to answer, all kinds of questions, allow people to make their own tables and so forth, there's still the unanticipated question when I go, yeah, you know what, that's not in the Factbook. And this is how I answer it. I go and download the Tableau workbook from the server, and I do the one little thing that I needed to do to get the answer to that question. So I'm still using the Tableau Factbook, even if that particular option hasn't been offered. So it's very easy for me to answer the questions of the few phone calls that do come in. I wanted to have a really great segue into this quote, which I love, but I couldn't quite figure it out. But let me just say what this means. I guess I was in a meeting and demonstrating our diversity dashboards with the president, the provost, and deans, vice presidents, and everything. And they were all, sort of astonished about all the information that was available there. And our president said, he's a wonderful, charming fellow and very flattering, and this is wonderful work, but I really just want a PDF that I can have. One single page. Can you just boil this down into a single page for me? And I think, I'm sympathetic with his response in that that's what he needs. President of a large institution like Cornell, he can't be poking through all the options. And that's not his job at our kind of university. He's representing the university externally, doing fundraising and so forth. So he wants the big picture. The big picture is there. He doesn't need to drill down. But what our dean of students said in response to the president's comment was, you can't interrogate a PDF. And I just love that comment. So what he's saying is we would bring data to meetings. We're at the university level, not at the unit level. We'd bring information to the dean's meeting. Maybe it's diversity information or whatever it is. And I think the deans would all say, well, that must be true somewhere else. It's not true in my division or unit or whatever it was. But now, whatever we do, we allow folks to drill down to provide so that they can see the information about their own unit and so forth. And this is what our dean of students was talking about. You could dig down, you can interrogate the PDF, or you can't interrogate the PDF. You can interrogate the Tableau visualization and say, is this true in this area? So I came up with this idea of having quotes and slides because the Tableau template that they sent had quotes in it. So I thought, what are some other good quotes I could use? And I decided I would quote myself. But this, you know what, this came to me like when I'm sleeping or first thing in the morning. But it's the difference from having data. I mean, for years we had data. We have that data. And have you heard this tagline like, we have data, but we don't have information or whatever. We had data. We had mountains of data. We have data systems and so forth, but people weren't getting what they needed out of it. We've gone from having data to using data in the sense that now I can pull up that Factbook information and I'm getting many more questions about, well, how about, well, here's an easy one, student to faculty ratio. And let's, look at student faculty ratio in the context of square feet and so forth. And so we've gone from just presenting the data in the context of one page about enrollment or whatever it is to taking that information, putting it with this other information and so forth. So we've really gone from having data to using data. This is, again, revisiting the quote about the Factbook that I showed initially. I just want to say that if you don't have a Factbook or you don't have a functional Factbook and you're at a university, I love the Factbook because it makes my job just so much easier, and I think it's a critical aspect of what we do in institutional research. Here's my contact information. I didn't bring slides, and I'll put this up at the end. I wanted to show one more thing because we do have a few more minutes. So here's my contact information, then here's the slide that says you're supposed to take the survey at the end. But I will return to these. I wanted to take the opportunity to show one more thing that I want to preach about. So again, if you go to our public website, you can go irp.cornell.edu, actually. We have this little data viz gallery, which was our way of dishing up some of our cool visualizations. You can visit that stuff there. One thing that I wanted to show is, here's an example of us using survey data. This is incoming students to the university. There's a drop down here that allows you to choose questions. So this one is, during your first year, how difficult do you expect the following to be? Managing your time effectively, so forth. So, and there's the survey responses. These ones are shown by college. But here's what I wanted to show you. And this is in the spirit of yesterday's talk about don't be afraid to be stupid or whatever. I don't know how many times you've distributed percentages and people state them incorrectly. So you say 37% of students in arts and sciences are very satisfied, and they say 37% of those who are very satisfied are from arts and sciences or something like that. Things come out. So one best practice that we are trying to adopt is to give people the sentence that they can use. We have a very smart audience, but it's very easy to flip these things around. So I want to that's my tip and trick. It's very low tech, but I would suggest folks use it. So this says 36% of human ecology students expect that managing your time effectively will be quite difficult and so forth. So something that I recommend. I'll go back to my contact information and I'm happy to answer any questions or address any questions. Yes?
Hi, I'm from the IR office at the University of Washington here, and I did contact you to ask about your approach to presenting all this Factbook online. And I wanted to highlight two things that I think you may not have bragged about enough. And that is that what you said about your non-fancy trick of adding 2 parameters to allow people the freedom to explore the data. We had one, and then I saw yours, and I thought, I'm such an idiot. Such a small step, but it's such a huge advantage in being able to give people the freedom to access the information in the way that they want it, and to free you from having to answer multiple similar questions over and over again. So I think that's a really key element, and as you said, it's easy to do. It's just really important to realize that it's actually super useful. And when we did 3,
Yes.
So that's another thing that you can easily do with parameters. And the other thing I was wondering if you could highlight, because I used it as a resource and I thought it was really cool, is your Visit in the Wild page.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Where you collect links to other universities' sites, because everybody has a slightly different perspective on what's useful and why it's useful in that way. And so by visiting your page, you can find all the other pages and come up with a blend that works for you.
So I'm supposed to repeat the questions? So the first comment was, oh, you're too humble, you're more awesome than you said. The second comment was that it's really handy, and I agree, and we have this on some places, if you can change head counts to percentages and back and forth, and that can be done with a parameter, and that's pretty easy. And the third is that we do maintain this page called Visit in the Wild, where we collected all the Tableau pages of higher ed institutions that we thought were cool. And now I'm happy to say that somebody, I can't remember who it was, I've gotten 2 calls now saying, well, we're in higher ed and we're not on your Visit in the Wild page, so please add us. So I'm not sure I could actually find it. It's probably because it's not navigable from our, let me just try Visit in the Wild and see if that brings it up. But I'm sure that it is on I know it's on the Tableau webpage in the education group. So if you have, nope, that's not it. So we have these pages that are not navigable from our system because they're kind of not to be public, and I call them orphan pages, and then we try to remember where they are by putting them in the orphanage. So let's see. There it is, Visit in the Wild. Maybe I shouldn't have showed you that, but oh well. All right, so here are similar offices with public-facing visits. So, feel free to let us know if you want to be on here. It's a lot of fun to go and look at these. And I will say one more thing, which is I had a colleague at a peer institution call me and say, can we just do everything that you did and just copy your work? And I said, sure, go for it. And I was feeling very proud. And then I went and looked at their page, and I'm like, they copied it but improved it. And so then I had to go back and copy back. So I'm into that. One thing I love about institutional research is that we all help each other. And I think we help our field when we help each other. So, yes?
Just as like a self-taught Tableau user myself, what would you say were your greatest resources for improving your techniques?
Google. So what is the best resource for improving your techniques when you're a self-taught Tableau person? And it was the Google, I Googled things all the time, and that brings you to the Tableau resources online. But and I say that I wasn't trained. I did send other staff people to training, so we worked together to figure out things and so forth. But you know how trainings are, they're hit and miss, and it's like profit of coffee beans, and I don't understand, yeah. Yes, there's a question here.
This has been really, really helpful, and this is really good what you're sharing. Thank you so much. Can you talk a little bit about the resources and the time it took? You said in 2012.
Yes.
You decided, or 2011, you decided to go to Tableau?
Yes. So the question is, how long did it take, and time and resources and so forth? I'm not exactly sure when we decided. I had seen Tableau enough prior to our choosing to go forward with it, and I will say it was when I became aware of Tableau Public Premium, or Tableau Digital as it was called, or whatever, that I thought, oh, we can do it because I can afford that. We can just go forth on our own and no permission. Yeah, I had a line in my notes about one thing I love about Tableau is, that it's empowering, and I love power. So anyway, I'm not sure exactly when we decided, but I was bringing on a new staff person in the office, designed the job description so that it would help us accomplish those. She had never used Tableau before, but she was very good data person. So she spent probably 2 months cleaning up data so that it would be ready to go. And then she made that 1868 to the present thing. And we were just, picking vet and business school and law school all day long. We had a really good time. So I would say from her start to that publication, was definitely less than 6 months, maybe much shorter. And then it's just a matter of churning through, and I think we're now at a point, even some of the stuff that I shared with you, I feel like, oh, I wish I had done that a different way. You may have noticed in the 1868 to the present, there's 2 similar graphs. Why did I do that? Or why did we do that? I'm going to clean that up. One's undergraduate and one's, anyway. Again, it's a reflection of how the data are structured. That undergraduate, graduate, and professional is one field, undergraduate college is a different one, and that's how we were thinking about the world. But I don't think we should be in that box. There's a question here in the back. Yes, Stripes.
Okay. How does it deal with small cells? So with some of the parameters being able to cross that by, gender, race, and ethnicity of college, I'm guessing that at some point that gives.
Yeah, so there are ways to deal with small cell sizes, which we've done with survey data, like creating a calculated field that it will be null if the number is less than 5. That's sort of a pain in the butt. But in those 2 drop-downs in the Factbook, are we there now? Yes, here's an example. You can get college here in the first drop-down, and you can get whether or not somebody's a minority, but you cannot get college and detailed race categories at the same time. So we did a little bit of thinking about what would save our sample sizes here. So you can get detailed race categories, but you can't get the detailed race categories by college because some of our colleges are very small, and then we're talking onesies and twosies and so forth, and we just didn't want to make that an option. One more question, I think? Yes?
2 questions, but I'll try and ask it quickly. I have a question around, you mentioned that you're using server and premium.
Yes.
Can you maybe talk to, considerations of what you put on there, from a security perspective, what you put there, and premium versus in the cloud versus in the server? And then the second question is, the data itself. Do you have any challenges in terms of reporting data like FTE counts and things like that with other groups on campus like HR or registrar's office, or like discrepancies around that?
Yeah, you work in IR, I assume? Okay, the first question was about what do you put on server and what do you put on Tableau Premium, Public Premium. And I wish that I was using the enterprise level server that allowed me not to. And weird Cornell politics is Cornell actually has an enterprise level server. I'm just not on it. Whatever. Then it wouldn't be so complex to manage those things separately. But clearly we provide the deans with a great deal. So for example, on the diversity dashboards, the deans can go in and they can look at individual departments, the 3 people in them, who identified as Native American, so forth. They can do all that. So what we provide, we do a lot, obviously, to the public. What we do to the deans, provide to executives is a little more fine-grained. What I would like to be able to do, my new idea, is to go straight from a Factbook visualization and click on like executive and go straight to the other one if you can log into it. We haven't done that so far. We've provided a different sort of entree point. The second question was, do we ever run into discrepancies between what we report and what HR reports and the registrar? We don't have any conflicts with the registrar. They're very happy with us to do graduation rates and head counts and all the things that we need to do. We do have a weird thing with HR where they're like, no, we're counting faculty. And it's like, no, we're counting faculty. Well, they don't even know what a faculty member is and so forth. So, but I think the fact that we're publishing this information that's got a higher degree of prominence, a higher degree of utility, has now forced some of those discussions to happen. So we're now starting to talk to HR and say, let's agree what do we mean by non-academic staff. And that's just a wonderful welcome thing. I'm glad we're there at this point. So I think we have hit the end of our time. I do not have business cards. I forget that they exist. But again, you're free to email me at any time. Thank you so much.